I am going to beat you into the living death.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with the latest edition of the Living Death Show. Happy to have a special guest today. You've seen him on this channel before. I've joined him on his shows on MMA Fighting several times. A good friend of mine. Happy to have him back. Happy to see his face, get to talk to him. Mr. Jose Youngs, how you doing, my man?
What's up, boss? How's dad life? I haven't talked to you in
Man,
6 months, maybe.
I mean, our hip hop group chat has dried up, man, with these kids. So
not only has it dried up, there has been a very important song that has come out in the last 12 hours that we haven't even talked about yet.
We got to talk about that. So that's going to be our off-camera discussion right there. We got to have that convo. We got some comic book stuff we got to talk about too. So we got to go a deep dive into friendship here when we wrap things up. But let's not leave the other two guys who are on the show every week in the dust. We love them so much. We're going to introduce them despite the fact you know them already. Skype has messed up the order that we like to show these, but whatever. First up is the jack of all trades who has mastered them all, the senior editor of Sherdog.com, and the big homie, Ben Duffy. What's up, Ben?
I'm doing really well. It's always good to have Jose here. Always makes the place just a little more handsome, and brings his wealth of knowledge. You guys are way ahead of me on the hip hop tip, but I have been banging the new Pusha T because everything he puts out is just a masterpiece. And the new one, It's Almost Dry is
the Pusha T album is fantastic. The problem is when K Dot drops anything, everything just doesn't matter in the world.
Yeah, nothing matters.
Literally nothing else matters.
Like, listen to Vince Staples' album now while it still matters.
Right.
Because that's another banger that's out there right now. All right, and of course, the man who anchors the panel every week with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers, the associate editor of Sherdog.com, also my good friend, Mr. Jay Petrie. What's up, Jay?
I'm really happy to have Jose here too, because the last time we were all going to be on the show together, I was dying or something, I don't know, and we all had to split up. So I'm like, I have the thing, and I have the questions, and I send them out there, and then I'm not there. So I introduce myself when I meet Jose in Houston, and I'm like, oh yeah, we actually didn't end up meeting because I was dead that week. So it's kind of funny how this stuff works out. I am a little behind on the hip hop. I just discovered this new album. It's a banger. It's called It's Dark and Hell is Hot. And I mention it because there's a certain fighter that walked out, Blachowicz walked out to a song that the UFC called Mike Tyson's song, obviously, because Mike Tyson walked out to intro that one time, and that was kind of a funny thing. Stat of the week is 30, because 30 is a magical number this week, because 30 is the total number of significant strikes landed by both of the winners of the main and co-main events of UFC 274. So Charles Oliveira and Carla Esparza both each landed 30 significant strikes. It took Charles Oliveira 3 minutes and change. It took Carla Esparza 25 minutes. So there's your 30. There's your stat of the week.
Justin Gaethje slapped that many hands during his walkout.
Wow. So I've got three good friends with me on the Walkout Network. I've got my Nats hat on, and I've got Wakanda in the background. I'm excited. Let's get things started. But before we do, remember to like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. First up, of course, UFC 274, which our homie Jose was in the building for, as you are a Phoenix resident, so you didn't even have to travel for this one. I know that felt very nice and convenient.
Not only did I not have to travel, I could walk to everything.
Oh,
that's
man.
How close I was. The fighter hotel was about a 10-minute walk. The arena was about a 15-minute walk. The press conference was about a 12-minute walk. So easy peasy hometown fight.
You pulled the old Dave Doyle move whenever UFC fought at Staples, so that's actually pretty impressive.
He just biked there. The thing is, he would have probably biked to the arena from California though. So
that's very true.
One time I saw him hopping into his truck, and I was like so surprised he even had a motor vehicle. But Dave, we got to reach out to Dave too. But anyway, let's go ahead and get things rocking, man. So your perspective, 274. Obviously, the big story around the event was the main event. but because of the weight miss by Charles Oliveira being stripped of the title, before we go into whether the UFC handled that situation appropriately or what this means going forward, Jose, can you describe what it was like in the media room while all this is unfolding?
It was a sensation that I had never felt before, but that's because it had never happened before. This was Charles Oliveira is now the answer to a trivia question. Who is the first UFC champion to lose their title on the scale? So we've had this happen with previous fighters. We've even had like scares. Like remember when David Figueiredo, the last time the fighters were in Arizona, he was the last one to weigh in and he looked like death. We've seen fighters walk in at the last minute. We've even seen heavyweights strolling at the last minute. We've seen fighters have to go back, weigh in, and come back. But like if you've been at these Apex shows, when those fights happen, or when you get a guy that'll come in like half a pound over and then they get that extra hour or so, we don't always stick around to watch the re-weigh-in because we don't have, especially if it's like a prelim person that there's no title implication or like a UFC debut or like I think the only one I we actively stuck around for was when Greg Hardy had to go re-weigh in, but that's because that was heavyweight and we were like, is a heavyweight gonna miss weight? I don't think that's ever happened before. When Charles, and it was also strange because his coaches the night before posted on Instagram that he was already on weight, like 9 hours early. And then he posted and tweeted in the morning that he was on weight. And then we were waiting and we were like, well, there's like 6 minutes left. This is nuts. And then he showed in, missed weight, left. Everyone had to stick around. If you've been to official weigh-ins, usually there's a lot of people behind you for like teams or family members that are just watching. It was empty. It was just us. And then when Charles came out, Charles's team on one side and even Trevor Whitman was on the other side watching the weigh-in. So it was a sensation that I had never felt before. Something that I hope never happens again. But we were getting more and more and more nervous. Now Trevor Whitman on the side. You rarely see coaches there either. That's kind of a boxing thing, especially like when the hand wraps and the weights and everything. But when Charles was weighing in, Trevor Whitman is like shouting instructions at the commission. He's like, "Hey, don't let him touch the towel. Hey, can we get a second pair of eyes in the back? Like, hey, make sure he's not tippy-toed," or stuff like that. Like, so I enjoyed that aspect of it. But yeah, it was a sensation that I never felt before, and I hope I never feel again because I don't want champions losing their titles on the scale anymore.
Yeah, we've seen challengers not make weight. Think of Yoel Romero a couple of times did that, and
Figueiredo.
Figueiredo, and who else? It was one of Anderson Silva's opponents,
Michael Jordan.
Too. Yeah. Yeah. So we've seen this before, but never a champion. We've seen it in other organizations, but in the UFC, kind of crazy. But let's talk about how this issue was handled, because there was some controversy about whether the UFC's unofficial scale backstage was wrong. We had some fighters and coaches and commentators kind of weighing in on this matter. I mean, who do you think is at fault? Is it Oliveira's fault for missing weight? Is it the UFC's fault or the commission's fault for this pound allowance in the first place? Or who is to blame for what happened?
I don't know, because I don't think we even know the genesis of this, because I'm sure you guys have all seen like Justin Gaethje's video blog. Like, he was on weight, and when he weighed in, he was on weight. Joe Lozon was on the MMA Hour today, this morning, and he said that he had heard that it was Charles's team that was trying to switch it from pounds to kilograms, so when he could weigh in and this and that. The commission, it sucks because like we've like, if you watch the Apex shows or like Vegas shows or anything like, especially like when Mark Ratner does it, if it's just close, they're just like, made it, you're good, like, and he like slaps it to the side, so there is no controversy. Like Habib probably missed weight on Fight Island, didn't matter. George St. Pierre definitely missed weight in Montreal. Like, we've seen this like DC in Buffalo. Like, all this has happened before. So people are mad at the commission, and I get it, because 99 times out of 100, Charles is on weight. He just happened to get the one stickler that morning, but at the end of the day, like, that is their job. So like, hate him for all you want, but he's supposed to tell you exactly what Charles Oliveira weighs. And if it was 155.5 both times, and that's what he said, you can't really blame him for quote unquote following the rules. Now you can make an argument like, why did the UFC strip Charles? Because it's not a commission belt. That's the UFC's belt. They can do whatever they want with it. it's not a governing like body or athletic commission or anything like that. So that was strange, but I get it. Like if you want to enforce the rules, you don't want to make this precedent. So like if a champion's struggling to make weight and they're like, oh, I'll just come in at 156 and I get to keep my belt and then I'll be the champion next time and I'll get all my pay-per-view points. It just sucks today that I don't get, it doesn't count as a defense. You can't do that because then fighters will just stop cutting weight if it hurts. So I don't know who's at fault because I don't know the actual story and I don't know if we'll ever get the actual story. Now, I would love if they got digital scales, but then Joe Lozon also made a really strong point where it's hard to calibrate because a lot of fighters will bring their own scales in to like test it. They'll like get next to the UFC scale and like testing this and that. And what if you have like 10 scales out there that are all different? They're all digital. You also can't hack a regular scale. You can't lose power on a regular scale. So I don't know. I have no idea who to blame because I don't know the actual story.
I can't not look at Oliveira's team as the ones to blame on this one because I can't look at the commission. Like there was a lot of bluster and going around. It's very rare, and I reached out to Zach Candido, producer in the UFC, about their official weigh-in show to give him props for how they handled it because it was such an updating story. They're trying to fire off the right information as fast as they can, but the only problem was that Daniel Cormier kept saying words. And he kept just saying things. And I mean that with all due disrespect because he was wrong every single time. Like all the way. Like it wasn't just he's a little mistaken here. He's like, Oliveira's going to get to keep the title. And I'm like, no, that's not how this works. And then of course, Dan Helly's like, well, hang on there. And then it happened. So the entire weigh-in show, Cormier just kept spitting the wrong facts on the broadcast, only to have to be corrected. John Anik actually ended up coming out there to kind of set things straight, which was amusing. But it's always been my understanding that there's a ton of scales at these events, in the hotel, backstage, all over the place, and they're all put out there by the UFC. That's how I've always understood it, because the UFC isn't going to, make Texas or Arizona or California or Singapore or whomever is running the thing. Well, Singapore doesn't have a commission, but the point is to have somebody take care of that. It's always been the UFC, the promoter takes care of all that stuff, and the official scale on stage is the only one that matters. And Duffy raised a good point several times this week in that the official scale should be in line with the ones backstage so that the fighters don't have to keep zipping back and forth up to the front of the stage to say, hey, am I on yet? I'm not on, and go back, because the whole point of the big final stage at the end is this is my check-in. It's it. It's the one. I'm weighed in. I'm done. And it could be used like that otherwise, but it wasn't. And the confusion and the explanations and the Ariana Carnelosi and the Casey O'Neills, all the people saying it's off, and then Gaethje going, hey, look, no, it's not. It gave me a big kick out of that. So I can't fault anybody besides Oliveira and Oliveira's team. As an attorney and as somebody who kind of likes chaos, I appreciate the Arizona Commission following the rules to the letter. And I do kind of wish that Khabib had missed weight that time. Because, yeah, it's the very famous, we saw the video that he kept up there when Ratner, whomever was on the scale at Fight Island, and it was still moving, and he just went, boom, yep, you're on. I would like to see that, because I feel like there are historical examples of things being kind of swept under the rug, and I want it all out there.
I will say this. I think the UFC handled it correctly. As Jose pointed out, the UFC isn't a governmental organization. They can bend that rule. They can strip or preserve the title as they choose. But that's the difference between the UFC and one championship right there. Because Dana White is very open about when he thinks a commission screwed up, or a referee, or a judge. He will sound off on that in a heartbeat. But the difference is that he doesn't have the power to unilaterally change things according to how he thinks they should have been. If Oliveira, not saying if they just done it's wobbling, sweep, he's in, but if they had acknowledged that he was a half pound over championship weight and let him hold the title, that devalues a lot of what the UFC says its title stand for. So I do think the UFC handled it properly. It's a situation that sucks for everybody, and I think there's a little bit of blame to be sprinkled a lot of places. And I certainly hope that the Bronx walks out to public enemies by the time I get to Arizona next time he fights. But yeah, I mean, it was what it was, and I guess we move on.
Yeah, Ben, it's very difficult for me to disagree with your stance on that, because I see this as a broad problem in general. It is the fighter and the fighter's camp job to make sure that they are on point, make sure the scale is right, because at the end of the day, it's his responsibility to be there and make the contracted weight. I can't fault. This is one time I can't really fault the UFC for something. I'm normally the first person to point toward the UFC and Dana and say, "Hey, you guys are wrong." But I can't, because they did exactly what they should, even if they didn't have necessarily the most benevolent reasons, because I'm sure they were very happy to strip away Oliveira's pay-per-view points. I'm sure they were very happy to knock down his pay to whatever it was pre-title. So I get it. But they did what they should have done in the situation. He wasn't a champion by not making the weight, so therefore you don't treat him and pay him like you would a champion under that contract. But I really think we have a problem with the pound allowance in general. Why do we not have it for all fights? It seemed, I mean, this is a very scientific thing to make sure someone is at this exact weight, and there's all this, the allowance exists because there's human error, because there's going to be some discrepancies in scales. Does the presence of a belt somewhere on the poster mean that none of these problems still exist?
It's that weird
and Joe
concept
made
of
a
championship.
Joe Lozon made a Joe Lozon made a really interesting point today too, where about like people that were like if you watch the commission he was doing, he kept bouncing it this and that way, and Joe's like, what is he doing? If it's 155, you put it at 155, and if it tips at all, he's overweight, and if it tips under, who cares? It just, if he steps on the scale at 155 and it doesn't move, you're good. There's no reason to move it around, because what are you trying to find? What are you trying to make it one? If it's 155 4.4, who cares?
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
You guys have all handled the balance beam. Like there's a detente there. Like you have to really bonk it to get it out of there. Like it was kind of an obvious attempt to cheat.
Yeah, like they're made out of solid metal, and they're heavy for a reason, as a counterweight. Like it takes effort. So it's not like, a gust of wind can push it over. So the interesting stuff, and I'm sure this will have some strange effects on the lightweight division in the future. And let's get into that, because Charles Oliveira, still the best lightweight in the UFC, still the champion for all intents and purposes, but not actually the champion, since the title is vacant. Now that he has earned his #1 contendership, as is being described, who will he fight next, and is that who he should fight next?
I know the answer, and I hate it, because I disagree more than I've disagreed about most things. I know what the UFC is going to do. It's clear by how the chirping and the talking and the twittering. Conor McGregor is going to fight Charles Oliveira next, and I do not agree with that in any way whatsoever. I think I would rather have Gregor Gillespie fight for the title than Conor McGregor, and that's I have no interest in that whatsoever. What they should do, they have a real odd log jam with a lot of head-to-heads, and I just feel like the right person to fight Charles Oliveira for the newly vacated title is Islam Makhachev. He's on the win streak. He doesn't have a lot of the head-to-heads. He doesn't have the I'm Michael Chandler. I got knocked out by the champ last year, and I'm on a one-fight win streak. He has the accolades to do it, and he has the ability to help draw Khabib Nurmagomedov out of retirement, because we know he's coming back soon. It's just a matter of time. And if Oliveira beats Islam, duh.
I don't think Khabib's making 155 ever again. That dude's like 220 pounds.
He's big.
I mean, just push the scale over.
Sure.
You'd have to push pretty far.
It's like push him onto a different scale.
Fight Island, yeah.
Man, I hope you're not right, Jay.
Oh, me too, man. Don't worry. I'm not. I'm not putting it into the air. Oliveira called for him, so it's not like I'm starting it.
I mean, of course, Oliveira's going to call for him because that's where the cash is. So he'd be stupid not to call on him. Like if he called for Beneil Dariush, like,
Yeah.
really?
125,000 pay-per-view buys.
Yeah, like that's not the fight to sexy. I mean, although if I'm Oliveira and you're not getting pay-per-view points on the next fight, I might save that for when I actually officially win the belt back. That's probably what I'm thinking.
Point. That is a great point because he won't have the champion clause pay-per-view points. He'll be a challenger.
Yeah, Dana White said we'll find out.
Yeah.
So whenever that means,
Yeah. So Jose, who do you think should be next, and who do you think it will be?
I mean, the Islam fight I want to see just as like a high-level martial arts competition. I don't particularly care if there's 15 pounds of gold or not. I just want to see that fight as a fight. The Conor fight, if Charles is going to fight Conor, he should be the champion rather than for a vacant belt, so he could get the pay-per-view points and this and that. That's actually a very good point that was made, I think, once, and no one else has made it. The Beneil, if they want to do Beneil Islam, I get that for number one contender. I also I don't hate the rematch between Chandler and Oliveira. That shouldn't happen, but as a fight, Michael Chandler 10-8'd the champ.
Yeah.
And how many of the 5 greatest lightweights ever, Charles has fought 4 of them in the last 4 fights, and he submitted 2 of them, and he had Michael Chandler's back, and Michael Chandler got out. So of all of these guys, Michael Chandler clearly did the best. So I wouldn't hate it if they ran it back. Shouldn't happen, and I would expect it to happen. So Islam, I guess, I have a lot of questions about that fight. Outside of all the noise surrounding the fight, I just want to see those two get inside an octagon and fist fight. I don't care if it's in front of 25,000 people in Abu Dhabi or in front of 12 people in the Apex. I just want to see that fight.
Ben, what say you?
I actually threw a poll on the Sherdog front page this morning before I went to bed. Who should fight Charles Oliveira for the vacant lightweight title next? I offered Chandler, Dariush, Makhachev, McGregor, and someone else. Close to 600 votes in so far. Makhachev is sitting there at 61%. Oh. Everyone else right around 10 to 13%. Yeah, not to denigrate my own readers, but I expected them to be stupider than this. Yeah. But I wrote the matches to make column right after the fight, and I actually called for Chandler. I think it's a great fight. I think it has less shelf life than some of the other options. So deserve or not, I called for that one. But I'm really not mad at any of them. I understand that we get up in arms about what Conor does and doesn't deserve, but I still enjoy watching the guy fight.
It's a good problem to have at lightweight.
Yes, and I mean, calling for a McGregor fight, if you are a contender who just won in the octagon, anywhere between 145 and 170, calling for a McGregor fight is the equivalent of a Super Bowl winning quarterback saying he's going to Disneyland. It's just what you say. Conor, where you at? Why not? Why not buy your lottery ticket? So I'm really not mad at any of those options.
Yeah,
that's another good problem to have.
Yeah, Ben, sorry, I mean to step on your toes there, man. I'm kind of the reason why, besides the fact that from a merit standpoint, it's just utterly garbage. I'd rather see McGregor just do something else. I think competitively, even it makes more sense. Because you can put him up against Tony Ferguson right now, and that fight makes a lot of sense because of the trajectory that both of them have been on recently. You can put him. You can make that last Nate Diaz fight, and the UFC can cash out on that while they still can, because there's no guarantee what's going to happen if the Chimaev fight happens for Diaz and he goes to greener pastures in boxing, whatever the case may be. He gets into the Jake Paul sweepstakes, you're probably never going to see Diaz again. So cash out while you can, and in the meantime, let's run a legitimate lightweight division. I think that's okay. And if McGregor comes out victorious, then okay, now we can start, shoehorning him in to the title picture. I won't like it then, but at least it'll make a little more sense, and you can squeeze another good pay-per-view main event out of him. Am I crazy?
No.
Am I sexy?
It's hard to say with Jose here, honestly.
And this is him and Brett Okamoto are the guys who,
according to
might snatch the crown from me.
Molly McCann, I'm just the MMA media's version of George Michael, so I'll take whatever I can get.
George Michael was a great artist, man.
Yeah,
I know, he was also a beautiful man back in the 80s. So she told me that, I'm like, what did I do to you? And then an hour later, I'm like,
was like, that was a compliment. Yeah.
Respect, Molly. You might be
Awesome.
just sauced up there on the stage, but respect.
Oh, she was definitely sauced up.
Oh.
For sure. All right, gentlemen, let's keep it pushing, because there was another fight that actually was contested for a title, and that was
there really a fight?
Yes, fight in quotation marks here. Carla Esparza has won back the strawweight title that she introduced into the UFC against her then opponent, Rose Namajunas, in what some are describing as the worst UFC title fight in the history of the promotion. Fellas, is this right? Is this the worst UFC title fight ever?
Yeah, absolutely. It absolutely is. Yeah. Even Yoel Romero, Israel Adesanya, Yoel Romero landed an overhand. Like, there was something. There were moments in there that you remember. The weird, like, Yoel Romero's controller becoming disconnected at the beginning. At least there were moments in there that we still talk about. Like, there was a suplex, and that was pretty much it. There's nothing to talk about in this. Did you watch Israel's vlog? Israel Adesanya's vlog?
Where he was
where
like falling asleep or something?
He literally fell asleep, and his brother like pretended that happened, and Israel like woke up like that. You're a champion watching your fellow champion fight, and you fall asleep. It's the least. I don't like the word worst. It is the least exciting, I should say, that I have ever seen. Considering, and my colleague Jed, I can't believe I'm going to say this. My colleague Jed actually made a very good point that Rose, the challenger, and Rose, the champion, fight completely different. Yeah. Like, when she's the challenger, she is just like melting Weili, and she's knocking out Joanna, and she's having a hyper competitive fight against Jessica Andrade. And when she's the champion, she's getting like dropped on her head by Andrade, or having this fight against Carla, or even the second. Like, if you want to tell me that Carla won this fight for cage control and a suplex, how are you going to tell me Weili didn't win in New York when she did so much more than Carla? So it's just when Rose is on, she's the best. But when she's not, she's there. She's inside the octagon, I guess.
Yeah, good point there, man. I kind of agree with you that this was the worst UFC title fight that at least I can recall off the top of my head. And I can think of some other ones that weren't very aesthetically pleasing, but the difference is a lot of those were dominant performances. It was George St. Pierre just grossly out wrestling somebody. It was Tito Ortiz doing the same to a couple other people. It was like one-sided just washings that just didn't, register as far as an entertainment standpoint was concerned. But this was like a fight where no one really did anything. There was no one that was in control of any real moment. It was, I guess, and even I'll say, like, if the fight were longer towards the end, they started trying to pick things up a little bit. If this were hypothetically a 7-round fight, then maybe we would have seen some more excitement toward the end, and then we'd have a different overall view of this. But the main reason why I say this is the worst UFC title fight is because it lacked tension. And even when you look at the Wonder Boy and Woodley fight, the rematch that was widely panned, I enjoyed that simply because there was tension. There was like the anticipation that something destructive could happen at any moment. This was completely devoid of that. So like the anxiety, the anticipation, all the crazy emotions that you feel leading up to a fight and going through the fight and waiting for that timer to tick down to 0 in every round and wondering what's going to happen in between, it just wasn't there. I was just watching people move, and that's just not very fun.
I talked about this immediately after, on the recap show, and my co-host Keith and I mildly disagreed because we were talking about other just historically bad title fights, Sylvia versus Munson, the second Wonder Boy versus Woodley fight. And he pointed out that in most of those other terrible ones, it was a one-sided, like, just shellacking. Well, not shellac, but just, completely one-way traffic. He's like, this one, at least there was suspense. That I had no idea who was winning, and I had no idea who they were going to say won until they said it. And I said, okay, that's true. Like, that did keep you kind of hanging on, but this now has less rewatch value than any of those. I would watch Jeff Munson shoot single legs from 15 feet away like twice tonight before I ever watch Rose versus Carla again.
I gotta go to qualify this. I have to go esoteric, and I have to go. I was 9 at the time, so I didn't understand it quite the same way. But as a karate student, my dojo
This is
would
about
sometimes
porno,
show
isn't
UFC fights. What are you gonna do? It's formative. It's a formative time in a child's education. It was back in the early UFC days when they were running tournaments at every event. UFC 9 rolled around, and they decided we're not going to do a tournament. We're just going to have fights, and we're going to put on this weird thing called the Super Fight, which was the Super Fight title. And
this is the only other acceptable answer, and it's the only reason I put that number 2 is because of the rule thing.
Yes, and the reason why it was not just so horrible because it was just a dreadful fight. It was because Dan Severn and Ken Shamrock rematch for the Super Fight title at UFC 9, and because of John McCain's campaign against the UFC, fighters were not allowed to punch people in the head.
John
and
McCain from where?
John
McCain from where?
I mean, from some state that's from somewhere.
Damn
and so obviously they couldn't quite enforce it. The rule was that the statement, at least according to Big John, was that the fighters would be arrested at the end of the fight card if they punched each other. And so that led to like open-handed palm strikes and weirdness and some punches. Nobody got arrested, obviously. But for the course of 24 minutes, Shamrock and Severn kind of danced around in circles. And then there was an overtime period where literally 0 strikes landed in their little overtime section. And then the second overtime, which was just a dreadful thing. And so it was actually 30 minutes of nothing, which makes it to me worse than Carla Esparza and Rose Namajunas too, because nothing happened to a worse degree. And I think they were even further apart than Rose and Carla. And that it was just, it hurt. And I didn't understand it. And I thought, what aren't they doing something? Aren't they going to do anything? And it ended up being a decision win for Shamrock somehow. I still don't know. But that's the worst title fight in UFC history. But this is
that's like such
that's what I'm saying.
So many
extenuating
circumstances on that. Yeah. I mean, this was bad.
I mean,
like
you could honestly make a list of just the worst Anderson Silva title fights, like the Leites fight, the Maia fight, the Patrick Cote fight. Like Anderson Silva's the man. He had a lot of bad fights. He's essentially the Nas of UFC champions. Puts out the greatest of the great and then just the worst of the worst. Like I hate Nas is my favorite rapper ever, but there are a lot of bad Nas bars. You know, he's kind of bad at putting out consistently great music. Just when he's on, there's no one better. And then even you can make it like how many Tim Sylvia fights are we gonna add to this list? Yeah. Like there's like the third Arlovsky fight. Yeah. There's too many to count with, like especially in that dark era of the UFC.
Yeah. So I mean, this was like the Dr. Not boot of title fights. So for all you Nas fans out there. All right, so let's keep things pushing. 2 quick cuts. We're going to put 30 seconds on the clock, and I'm going to ask these gentlemen a question, and maybe we'll spare a little time if everyone wants to chime in on these topics just a little bit. So as our guest of honor, Jose, I'll introduce this segment with you. Is the book written on Justin Gaethje's title chances? Can you envision a situation where he wins an undisputed belt?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, 100%. Justin Gaethje is the most exciting fighter in all of mixed martial arts in any weight class of the last 15 years. I mean, Dustin Poirier just got choked out by Charles Oliveira, and if he fights for the UFC championship in 2023, I wouldn't be surprised either. We're talking about Conor McGregor, who hasn't fought one at 155 since 2016, something like that, and he might fight for a title. I'm not counting Justin Gaethje out on anything. As long as Charles Oliveira holds that belt, if Michael Chandler wins that belt, you don't think they're going to want to do Chandler versus Gaethje 5 rounds? Come on.
Yeah. Very, very, very good answer right there. And I mean, he did drop Oliveira 2 or 3 times. So yeah, he didn't do too bad despite the final result. So all right, Ben, go with you next here. Of all the competitors this weekend, who do you think should be next to retire?
Donald Cerrone.
That is nice
You asked
trick
me
answer.
you asked me a 3-second question and gave me 30 seconds.
That is true. I mean, we'll just have to talk about something else in the meantime. How's your day, buddy?
I'm staying away from tacos, which is tough to do in Houston, but aside from that, I'm doing great.
Oh yeah, and I'm cutting out all the sugar, so I'm like, I'm fiending for a donut or something, man. But
hey, Jose, you coming to Austin next month?
Probably not. I'll be
dude,
flying
watch
back
the
from
time. The
Singapore.
buzzer just went. Dude, shut up, man.
Hey, we're I live in Phoenix, man. We don't play by the rules when it comes to buzzers and all that kind of stuff.
All right, Jay, you are up next. Should Macy Chiasson fight Amanda Nunes next at 145? And what do you do with the division overall?
Well, hold on. Excuse me for a second. Let me pull up the UFC's rankings at 145 pounds. Oh, wait. That has never existed in the history of the division because there are not 10 women or 5 women that actively fight in the division. Dude, Norma Dumont asked the best question that I wish the promotion had responded in any way. Be like, what are we doing here? What's the point? What's the point of all of this? And I think Macy Chiasson wants to fight Amanda Nunes because she wants to be the champion in some divisions. So yes, make it happen.
All right. All right, Jay, can you do me a favor? Read me the remaining questions so I don't sound like a crazy person.
I would be happy to. So the fight that may have earned him a title shot, Michael Chandler faced off against Tony Ferguson, lost the first round for most of our eyes, and then out of nowhere put his foot upside Tony Ferguson's face, knocked him out. Does Michael Chandler's front kick knockout pass Mullen McCann's spinning back elbow for the greatest knockout this year?
I believe so. I mean, the technical prowess it takes to land that particular kick while someone is sidestepping is nuts. And it was perfect heel to chin. I mean, it landed beautifully. I saw a thread on Twitter earlier today where it was comparing all the front kick knockouts that have happened in the UFC. And Lyoto Machida, Randy Couture was beautiful because it was a jumping one. But this one involved sidestepping. It involved lateral movement, and landing such a precise shot like that was gorgeous. Michael Chandler, he's got it, man.
I would like to motion that everybody gets a bite at the
apple.
Oh,
absolutely. That's why I saved it for the last one.
I think Jose was chomping at the bit. So
it's number 2, and the Anderson Silva Vitor front kick is still the best because that kind of lit the fuse of Brazil MMA. There was also a championship fight. It was also the first. Michael Chandler's probably 2 because he's like several inches shorter than Tony Ferguson. And when have we ever in the history of Michael Chandler's career, is this the first and only front kick he has ever thrown at someone's chin? Probably. I've seen him throw push kicks and like front push kicks where like he'll like push you into like Sparta kick you, but he's not like punting a football in there.
No. He said afterwards, "Oh, we don't really train that." You don't say. Well, I mean, I'm going to side with the representative from Liverpool there because Molly McCann herself was present, and the cameras immediately cut to her absolutely losing her shit when that kick landed. Like, I think she probably thinks it's the knockout of the year. I'm with her. Like, just the impact. Like, Tony Ferguson was alarmingly deaded by that thing.
And I don't know if they showed it on the broadcast, but being there, because I was hoping when they weren't showing Tony Ferguson because it was not great. He was
very small.
He was unconscious far too long. I thought they were gonna have to stretcher him out.
Yeah.
This man agrees. See, this man took a longer nap than Tony Ferguson, I would imagine.
Yep. And my daughter is now under my care because my son is up. My wife's got to tend to him, so I got the baby girl. Yeah, just had to switch around.
Hates you.
When it comes to this crazy knockout, to totally not be sidetracked completely, hey little baby, is Michael Chandler punted somebody in the face. Michael Chandler, who wrestles and has a big right hand. This wasn't Ben and Keith Schillen on their recap show were laughing, and it was a great discussion they had. You know, the list they would make of the possible ways that Michael Chandler would knock somebody out, and front kick was maybe in the 50 range or something, because
like what any kind of kick was like 30.
Yeah,
Like-
just a head kick. That'd still be that would
Yeah.
still be wild. And the height differential and the style of the way they fight and how good Tony Ferguson was looking in that fight. I gotta give it to Chandler here for the knockout of the year, and that's really recency bias that I'm okay with, because and I actually wrote this in the play-by-play for Sherdog, that the camera cut to Molly McCann, the author of the previous greatest knockout this year, to see her freaking out or something like that. So I think it got Macy, or it got her Molly's stamp of approval, and so that gives me too.
Yeah, that was excellent. Like, I can't wait to have that
Tony
conversation.
He was
later
knocked
in the
out
year.
so frightening. Yeah, I mean,
Jose was saying while you were getting the Laya that like it was bad.
I was hoping they
cut
weren't
away
showing.
quick.
I was hoping they didn't show it on the broadcast because he was down. Like they had to roll him over, and his feet were crossed and like his body was kind of locked up. I thought they were gonna have to stretcher him out. The last time I saw that was, remember when Matt Hamill head kicked Mark Munoz?
Oh,
It was like that. Like he was unconscious for a long time. And then when he walks by, he was obviously not there either. I couldn't believe they made him stand up for the official announcement. I'm like, get him out of here.
Yeah, it's like it's no point in him even being there. I'm just surprised Rogan didn't try to interview him.
Dang, you beat me. I was gonna say if this were a title fight, he would have gotten interviewed. Darn you, beat me to it.
Oh man. All right, gentlemen. So let's move on here to the best titled segment in all of media history. I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons. This is where we share something that surprised us or ironically did not over the course of the past week. I'm going to reintroduce the clock because we do want to respect our special guest time. And where is the minute? There we go. So we're got a minute on the clock for everybody to tell us something that surprised us or ironically did not. So, Jay, I'm going to start with you. What's your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
We're leaving the UFC. We're leaving all the rest. We're leaving MMA. And we're going to BKFC, but not the one you expect. BKFC held an event in Thailand. And there was a fight between two mainstays of Full Metal Dojo. They all kind of circle, and there's a very odd relationship of how they do things, where these two guys met, TJ Chang and Fabiano Hawthorne, and they met last year, and the fight was stopped due to heat exhaustion. Well, they rematched heat exhaustion. I'm not joking. So they rematched this year, and it was the comedy of errors. There were fouls of every kind. There was a takedown. There was a push off the face. There was punches behind the head. There was a knee to the groin. It was everything you wanted in a bare-knuckle boxing fight. Wait, hold on a second. It was absolutely atrocious. I was not surprised, Mr. Falcons. And the guy that did the fouls was one of the lead referees over there. I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons.
Oh, that is beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. All right, Jose, can you share with us your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
I am very surprised. Let me rephrase. I am shocked and chagrined that my fellow Phoenicians would boo MMA icon Shogun Rua. We lost. If someone's wondering, hey, did the Dallas Mavericks beat the Phoenix Suns last night because of poor refereeing? Nope, it's karma. You boo Shogun Rua, you lose the game the next day. That is on you, Phoenix fans. Shogun Rua could do anything in the world, and you should give him a round of applause. He could make a bowl of yogurt, and I'll be like, do you, man? All power to you. The fact that he's fist fighting another human being in 2022, a guy that already knocked him out, and you're going to boo this man, you deserve everything. You're going to hell, and you deserve everything that's bad that happens to you in life.
Damn good one. I mean, as much as I don't want to see him fight anymore, if he steps into a cage, you show respect.
Heck
You
yeah.
do not boo the man.
I know in overtime, but here's what should happen with Shogun. You sign one fight deal with free agent Lyoto Machida. We finally get the rubber match that we all needed, and then they can both retire, and Machida can go do karate combat.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Sign me up for that.
It's a good bonus.
That's beautiful. All right, Ben, can you share with us your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
I've got a grab bag of surprising moments. I'm surprised that Ryan Bader versus Chet Congo was not the worst title fight this weekend. I am surprised that the UFC and PFL both had women miss weight in the heaviest weight class they have. Like, do you ladies know that if you can't make that weight, you don't have a job? You got no place else you can go. You missed the heaviest weight class that they've got. Like, I thought I was desensitized and past my capacity to feel surprised at this sport anymore, but plenty surprised me this week.
That's it. Fight Gabby Garcia.
Yeah. I mean, but you get like that's like a once a year thing. It's like New Year's Eve, and that's it. And if you're not a 60-year-old grandma, you just don't qualify as one of her opponents. So
Gabby, you know, like she can only cut to 235 like once a year. She doesn't like to, you know, like be in that.
She feels skinny down there. Yeah. Yeah, man. It is a lot of I'm not surprised moments, and I got a few seconds left till the buzzer runs out, and then I'll start it over. There we go. All right. So I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment. Like I said, a lot to choose from. First off, Canelo losing to Dmitry Bivol. You know, for some people surprising. Kind of surprising that Canelo lost, but at the same time, like weight classes exist for a reason. And we can talk about the technique and stuff in that fight later. But I don't have the time right now because what I really want to talk about is something that isn't surprising, but gets surprising because the levels of stupidity just get lower and lower and lower. I'm used to fighters saying dumb things.
Oh my God.
Twitter exists so fighters can say stupid things. But Jake Shields, come on, my man. Jake Shields, his theory about AIDS. This is what he says. He says, when I was a kid, they pushed nonstop fear and propaganda that we would catch AIDS from sex. AIDS never crossed over from gays and intravenous drug users. So how it spread is wrong. The quote unquote experts never admitted they got it wrong. They just stopped talking about it. Jake Shields, do yourself a favor. Throw your phone in the trash. This is perhaps the dumbest thing that's ever been committed online. Shut the hell up.
I'm surprised, Mr. Falcon said. I'm surprised.
Yeah. I'm not surprised that Jake Shields said something stupid, but Jake Shields saying something that stupid. Anyone
unprompted, by the way, was this come out of nowhere?
As far as I know, I don't know what like weird, conservative channels he was watching. I don't know if he was watching like a Tommy Lauren rant and just lost his mind, but I don't know. Nothing should be prompting that level of stupidity. I'm sorry.
I mean, I don't want to ask because I don't want to elicit any more of his stupidity, but I am curious how he thinks AIDS is transmitted.
Hey, ladies, if you are in, ladies, if you're in the Bay Area, if you are in the Bay Area and you are letting Jake Shields hit it raw dog, watch out. Okay. Good Lord, man.
Shout out to Brandon Raw Dog Royval.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he thinks eating meat is what gives you AIDS.
So many other places I want to go on that. But in the
jokes write themselves, but we don't have the time.
Yeah, and I don't want to get canceled. So let's keep things pushing because another I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment comes courtesy of Bellator because MVP is not fighting a cab driver this weekend. He's fighting Logan Storley for the welterweight title. Gentlemen, what do we think of this matchup? And anything else on this card standing out to you?
Is it the interim title?
Yes.
Because Amosov is obviously dealing with
right.
I'm surprised that Paul Daly's. I guess he's gonna fight again, right? Like we all agree he's going to fight again. Like if he was fighting Koreshkov, the original matchup, then he probably would have retired. But like obviously Koreshkov can't get into London right now because of global events. So I'm surprised that Paul Daly is still pretending that this is his last MMA fight.
I'm surprised somebody replaced him. It's on the same level as Alex Polisi stepping in to fight Yoel Romero this past week. In the hey, we got to find somebody, let's slot him in because that's going to be fun, and then have like a stoppage at 5 minutes and 20 seconds into round 3 because what are we doing here? Yeah, I'm surprised about the Daly situation. I appreciate the hell out of the fact that Bellator didn't just go ahead and make Daly MVP2 for the interim title instead. Because I kind of thought they could have slotted that once Amosov pulled out. I thought, okay, we're going. I mean, for obvious legitimate reasons, I say Amosov withdrew from the fight, and this is going to happen. But do you guys see it in any other way than like 50-44 Storley?
No. I mean, I would for my entertainment sake, I would like to see something different than that. MVP is consistently one of the more entertaining fighters in the sport, but partly because he fights cab drivers most of the time.
It's just such a hard matchup. It's like the, I mean, I forget who was talking about it on Twitter, so I can't reference it, but it was the Esparza Namajunas too. The style matchup just continued so long, and you look at this style matchup of long stance, flashy kickboxer against a hardest of a hard-nosed, gritty grinder wrestler who can throw you around like 50 times.
Yeah, I mean, he's
other than
he's
like a
likely
knee
getting
to the
wrecked
head that breaks his skull. What are you doing here?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to get ragdolled most likely, and if he doesn't, then hey, we're talking about upset of the year. We're talking about we're talking about
if MVP wins, I'm gonna pick MVP to win.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, he's really good off his back. I think people forget about that. You ever when he's on his back, he has wicked wrist control from his back. Like he might not be doing it. He's one of those guys where like Tony Ferguson will cut you up, but MVP is so long that if I'm on top of him and I lift my arm to punch him, he can just, his arm isn't even fully extended. He still has your wrist. Like that dude's a long line. I think I'm gonna pick him to win. I just think Michael Venom Page is supremely talented. Obviously not nearly as good of a wrestler or a grappler, but I would say his striking and Storley's wrestling are like on par with each other's skill set. Like Storley was a 4-time All-American in Minnesota. That's being an All-American in Minnesota. You're a bad motherfucker. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. There's children on that might be listening to this. So I'm going to pick MVP, but it's like 51-49. I just think, I don't know. I also like selfishly, I've seen the Amosov Storley fight. That fight wasn't great. And I kind of want to will MVP versus Amosov into the ether because I want to see a fresh matchup like that.
Yeah, you got some good points there, and I'm feeling what you're saying. I just don't see it happen that way. I see MVP getting twirled around like.
Does anyone know the lines? Like, if the betting lines are out,
Storley's like minus 300 right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm not saying that MVP being an underdog is silly because he should be an underdog. I would put money on MVP if he's like if Storley is minus 300. Why not throw some money on MVP? Because him winning would not shock me.
Yeah. All right. Cool. I'm not mad at it. All right. Well, we also have the UFC going into action. I believe this is from the Apex Center. They back at the Apex Center this week.
Yeah. I'll actually be there for this one too.
Okay. So you gotta dust off the frequent flyer miles and get back at it.
It's 4 hours to Vegas from here, dog. I can just drive.
That close to Phoenix?
Yeah, buddy.
Oh. Okay, I didn't realize that. Okay, because it's like 4 hour drive for me, but I flew it every time I worked in Vegas.
Yeah, because you live in LA, and I wouldn't want to be in the car that long anyway. Come out of LA.
Oh, absolutely.
It take you 4 hours to get out of LA.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, you spend most of the time trying to get to like Bakersfield or something, and then you're free to go. All right, let's see here. Where's my? I'm tripping. I messed up my outline here. All right, here we go. So we got Jan Blachowicz and Alex Rakic in the main event. Who wins this one, man?
I don't know. This is 50-50 to me. Jan looked really bad in his last fight, and Rakic hasn't been in overly exciting fights recently, but he's winning. But Jan's also beating Israel Adesanya, and he knocked Dominic Reyes dead. I have literally no idea who's going to win this fight over 5 rounds.
This is I feel like there's a lot, especially for a fight to be taking place right after a pay-per-view. And we always talk about this on the show, that having these fight night cards immediately after a pay-per-view that has a lot of serious consequences and titles and whatnot, this just feels wrong because this main event is going to mean a lot for this division.
Yeah.
This feels like something that should kind of breathe on its own. That being said, man, I'm kind of leaning toward Rakic only because I thought the Blachowicz ascension would come down at some point, given his age and miles, and now just seems like an appropriate time after just getting decimated and having his title taken from him. So give me Rakic by a very, I'm not feeling strong about it, but I'll take him by decision.
This one, I think it's really a referendum on how you feel about the Blachowicz versus Teixeira fight.
Yeah.
If you think that was an aberration and just an off night for an otherwise still solid guy, then I think you take him over Aleksandar Rakic. If you think that's the first sign of decline in a 38-year-old fighter with a ton of fights under his belt, then you go with Rakic, and you're going for it's probably not going to be a super exciting fight. Because if Blachowicz wins, it's going to be with something spectacular in the first 3 rounds. If Rakic wins, it's going to be a 5-round decision, and it's just going to continue the slow roll he's on because his fights have been so dreadful that I think they've actually slowed his ascendancy into title contention.
Oh, definitely. There's an X factor that I keep realizing that we haven't seen Rakic in a 5-round fight. Haven't seen it.
It feels like we have because all of the 3-round fights feel like they're 5 years long. But yeah,
and his pace didn't really wane to a degree that made you wonder how. But at the same time, we've seen Jan go 5 hard rounds and look better as it goes on. The Jacare fight, I mean, whatever, but still, the point is he outworked Jacare. Izzy, the 4 rounds 4 and 5 when he really picked it up and tossed Izzy around. I think my confidence in Blachowicz isn't because I'm confident in Blachowicz. It's because the line pins him and makes it so Rakic is about a 2-to-1 or about 190 minus 200. This should be a pick 'em in my eyes. I think this should be a lot closer because of Blachowicz's body of work and everything he's been able to do against basically everybody besides Glover Teixeira, who does that crazy thing of surviving really horrible situations and getting you and choking you out. He's done that so many times. And the iron fists of the guy known as Maheta. So I'm leaning Blachowicz because he's such a substantial underdog in my eyes, but I would not be surprised to see a rocket blanket in this fight. And I think the most important thing is this is not our fight of the night. And I don't know what is. What is it? I'm actually not sure.
Yeah,
looking at this lineup.
Yeah, Jose, let me get your take on this one first. Who do you think is the sleeper for fight of the night here? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, I am. Sorry, it's like pots and pans, man. I don't want to be.
Yeah.
Fight of the night. I mean, anytime Davy Grant fights, I guess that's like probably a short list for some sort of bonus. Like, he's got a bonus in his last 4, right? And the last 2 have been fight of the nights. And I know he lost because it was to Yanez and Cheeto, but they were both fight of the nights. Before that, I think it was Jonathan Martinez and Martin Day. If I remember correctly, those were performances. So.
Yep.
I guess just going off of that, I would say he should probably be the favorite. But there's obviously it's like Span and Kutalaba is an interesting fight, but I think that's probably more of a performance bonus than a fight of the night performance. Same as like Michael Johnson and Alan Patrick and Vernon Gendro by Angela Hill, and probably not Catelyn Chukagian or Vivian Arujau, Andrea Lee, or Amanda Hebos. So I'm going to say Davy Grant, just because history will probably I'm hoping for a 3-peat for Davy Grant, 3 straight fight of the nights.
Oops, yeah. Now I was muted. Yeah, not a bad pick there. You mentioning the Michael Johnson Alan Patrick fight, like that I would like for that to end up being fight of the night, because a Michael Johnson fight, when it's exciting, is absolutely nuts, but you just don't know what you're going to get. This sounds like the type of matchup where he's going to go pedestrian route, and no matter who wins or loses, like it's just not going to be fun to watch. Like he tends to perform his best, based on the level of opposition, and Alan Patrick is not nearly the top guy in the world. So I think Michael Johnson's going to kind of go out there and pedestrian it. But Angela Hill's on the card, and that always makes me happy. So shout out to Angela Hill, fellow PG County native. Yeah, I stand Angela Lee. That's it.
I mean, I'm from Montgomery County, like over next door, but I love me some Angela Hill too. But sorry to say, and this is just going to dovetail what I was going to say really quick about this card. I'm probably the only one old enough here to remember the TV show The Love Boat. But
no, you're not.
The joke about The Love Boat was, they always had celebrity guests on, and if you were a guest on The Love Boat, you were either at the very beginning or the very end of your career. That's this card, because there are a couple of really highly touted prospects debuting here, like Tatsudo Taira, Jake Hadley. But then at the same time, there are 22 fighters on this card. There's probably 5 that'll lose their job if they lose, and one of them is Angela Hill. Like Angela Hill, Michael Johnson, Alan Patrick, and obviously only one of them can lose. Louis Smolka and Frank Camacho all stand a pretty good chance of being cut if they lose. It's just kind of an interesting mixed bag for an otherwise kind of unremarkable fight night card. But yeah, I mean, Angela Hill has lost. I mean, it'll be like 5 of 6 or 6 of 8.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like.
But so many close decisions. But she's also so willing to fight on short notice, and in this
she
this
gets,
rapid
she gets
schedule.
no breaks. Like if she beats
Yeah.
someone, she's immediately fighting a top 5 person the next time out.
And
It's
suddenly
ridiculous.
she's like Carla or Claudia Delia or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's absurd. Like how badly they brutalize her. But yeah, I mean, I'd be sad to see it happen because I mean, I like watching her fight. I like the whole vibe she brings. But yeah, like she's well under 500 in the UFC right now. So is Michael Johnson. And like Frank Camacho's like 2-5 in the UFC. I'm shocked he's still there. Period.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that might be a good place to conclude things this week. Big shout out to Jose. Thank you for joining us. I know Mondays are a busy day for you as MMA hours going on. So I know you guys are packed. So appreciate you taking the time out. Ben, Jay, as always, thanks for holding it down. So remember to like, subscribe, share, tell a friend, and tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. You can check Jose out on MMA Fighting, and Jay and Ben, of course, you can find their work on Sherdog.com, including fight coverage for the upcoming events. I know, baby. I know.
Boom.
So stay beautiful, stay positive, listen to everything you can before Kendrick drops, and stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.
Wow.